If you have been dealing with chronic symptoms like dizziness, gut issues, chronic pain, or any other type of symptoms that are really weird and come and go, and you keep going to doctor's appointments and they say everything's fine, so here's a prescription or here's a diagnosis, but I can't really do anything about it, and you're wondering, could my nervous system be the cause of this? I'm going to give you 5 signs to look out for that almost guarantee that these symptoms are being driven by your nervous system. And please keep in mind, I couldn't even begin to list all the symptoms and diagnoses that fall under this umbrella. This is the kind of weird stuff I'm talking about. Take a second to look at this list and even pause the video if you need to. If you see yourself anywhere on it, this video is for you. Sign number 1 is that you start to notice that your symptoms seem to get better when you're distracted. So this could be vacation. You go to the beach and you're like, I didn't even notice my symptoms. I've heard so many stories from people who travel for a couple weeks and their symptoms disappear or greatly reduce only to return full-fledged as soon as they get home. It could also be when you're deeply engaged in your work or engaged in anything where your attention is focused somewhere else and your symptoms just seem to go away. They seem to drift off into the background or they are eliminated completely. When you're dealing with real tissue damage doesn't care what you're engaged in. It doesn't care what you're focused on. It doesn't matter. It is going to be showing those symptoms, showing that pain all of the time. It's important to know if the brain and nervous system is involved. And one way to know that is that if the brain shifts focus and the signal's quiet, that is telling you that is neural circuitry in the brain and something going on within the nervous system. I noticed this on and off a lot throughout my recovery journey. I would just notice when I was fully engaged, for example, in my business on a coaching call, I would forget about my symptoms. When I would leave on a trip, I would forget about my symptoms. They didn't completely eliminate, but it was so obvious how much they had been reduced that I couldn't help but see, like, this must be including my brain and my nervous system if when my brain shifts attention, that signal, those alarms that have been blaring quiet, then this must have something to do with my nervous system. And while I had already gotten to a place where I pretty much believed that, there are certain signs that when they show up, it just makes it so obvious, which helps to increase your belief and it really helps to decrease your doubt about what's actually going on here. Sign number 2 is kind of the opposite. It's that your symptoms flare during stress. For many people, another symptom is that what you're experiencing, your symptoms started after a time of stress. So stress is intricately involved in these symptoms with the way they start and with the way they continue. And you'll notice I've been doing great and then I had to get a surgery, or I've been doing great and then my kid got sick or my mom died. There's something that happens that everything flares up and it's so clear this is linked to stress. And again, structural issues aren't going to be affected in that way. The nervous system is interpreting some level of danger or stress, and so it is turning up the volume on the symptoms. So if you notice that you have a hard week or you have a fight with your partner or you're just in the middle of a stressful season where you're like, wow, my body is screaming, my symptoms are screaming, those symptoms are caused by your nervous system. And I would say a lot of people notice this connection. They notice that these things are connected, but they don't give it as much value as they need to. There needs to be an emphasis on the fact that my symptoms are directly correlated to my level of stress, to my level of safety, or to my level of danger. And this can also be tricky because it can seem like the best option would be to eliminate all stress. And while we should be looking to reduce the stress that's unnecessary in our life, the more important thing to do is begin responding differently to that stress versus trying to get rid of it all at once. Sign number 3 is that your symptoms move around. I have found after talking to so many people that it is so rare to just have like one symptom. There are so many different symptoms in so many places of the body, and those symptoms will move, they will change, they will get more intense, they will get less intense. It'll be your head one day, it'll be your feet the other day, it'll be the right side one day, your left side the other day. It's just moving constantly around the body. Something that had all of your attention a week ago, completely gone and gone for 2 months, doesn't pop up for 2 months. The way these symptoms behave is very odd. It is very bizarre, but the bizarre nature of them is the signal that they are caused by your nervous system. So when your headaches turn into jaw pain, and that turns into ringing ears, and it's just going like head, shoulders, knees, and toes all throughout the body, I want you to remember that structural issues stay put in the part of the body that has been injured or damaged. But when it has to do with your nervous system, you're going to notice that those patterns will be wandering all over the place. Something to watch out for is thinking that every new symptom is a new diagnosis. I have seen it again and again and again. I have watched people go from having no issues except for maybe some mental health issues to suddenly they have 6 different diagnoses, and they're all connected to each other. It is really hard to not think that every new symptom is a brand new problem, but I want you to really stop and think about how that makes no sense. That is helpful. That is something that reduced so much of my doubt. Is like, I don't suddenly have neuropathy and allodynia and TMJ and facial pain and trigeminal neuralgia and neck pain and hip pain and everything else that I had over the entire span of my chronic pain and chronic symptom journey. Sign number 4 is that symptoms have spread over the years. You'll notice that it starts as one thing, and maybe that one thing was like your constant companion. For me, it was anxiety. And now when I look back, I realize that I also dealt with a lot of other pain throughout my body. I had pretty chronic hip pain. I had shoulder pain. I had neck pain. I was constantly at a chiropractor. I just thought it was normal. And then it moved from all those musculoskeletal issues into facial pain, and then head pain, and then muscle pain, and then neuropathy, and then numbness and tingling. There was even a stage of my life that I remember where I had horrific IBS for 8 months straight. And each one of these diagnoses or symptoms gets its own specialist, gets its own prescription, gets its own solve, and none of them work. The thread here is a sensitized nervous system, not 5 different diagnoses. And each diagnosis is more scary than the last. You just start really beginning to feel like you're broken, and nobody is treating the whole body. It's like we're going to the heart specialist and then the neurologist and then all of these different specialists to try to help, when there is a common thread throughout it all. It is the nervous system. It can send up any signal, any symptom, for any reason, for any purpose, and it's just trying to do what it deems as necessary. But when you start having symptoms popping off in all different parts of your body, and they're moving around and they're growing and they're spreading, that screams sensitization. It screams nervous system created. And sign number 5 is that your symptoms are being triggered by things that should not matter. Things like weather, food, smells, clothes, sounds, a song, bending over, picking something up, sitting down, standing up, barometric pressure, heat, cold. These triggers have no logical connection to the symptom that you're experiencing. And I want to explain that this is what is called a learned response. We have some type of response. For me, it was learning about these things. I spent a lot of time in Facebook groups. I learned a lot about how my specific diagnoses progressed. I learned about what the future looked like. I learned about what other people went through. I learned about what this looked like in the future. And coincidentally, I would pay super close attention to those things. So if I would drink caffeine, oh my gosh, if I would eat wheat-based products, oh my gosh, if I would go out in the heat, oh my gosh, everything was affecting me. And these were things that were not tied to my symptoms. They were just these learned connections, things that I noticed in myself, things that I read about and learned about online. Our brain will pair the trigger with the alarm, with the symptom. It'll just loop these things together. So we think these things are absolutely correlated with each other. And in fact, we believe that this thing causes this. Heat causes a flare. Standing up causes a flare. And we make these connections over and over and over again. And then we throw fear into them, and it just loops them so strong in the brain and the nervous system. But the best news here is that if we learned it, we can unlearn it. This is something that gets triggered. We loop it together in our brain. We fire it and we wire it over and over again. But the good news is we can wire in the things that we don't want. We can also wire in the things that we do want. If even 2 or 3 of these apply, your nervous system is a major player in the symptoms you're experiencing. I've actually linked a new quiz in the description that goes through all 14 of the questions that really are going to ask you about how your specific symptoms behave. And you can do the quiz for any symptom that you have, not necessarily all your symptoms as a whole, but that's up to you. And I want you to remember that the more these signs apply, the more you can be confident that you're actually shooting at the right target here. Because I think that's what takes people so long to recover, is they're kind of just aiming everywhere and never getting to the actual root. So definitely take take the quiz and know that if even one of them applies to you, your nervous system is involved. But the more that apply to you, the more you can be confident. I think that some people can get really caught up in their own doubt, like, oh no, what if mine don't move around? Or what if this doesn't apply to me? Don't look for the way that it doesn't, look for the way that it does, because the bizarre way that these nervous system symptoms behave is something that we have to remind ourselves of when we have those moments of doubt. One of the big reasons why nothing has worked is just because any of the treatments we've been presented with have just been pointed in the wrong direction. And once you know the correct direction that you're moving, you can get relief really quickly. Just remember that this isn't something that you're stuck with for life. It is a pattern that your nervous system learned, and if it can learn it, it can unlearn it. I want to know, did any of these signs resonate with you? Does your symptoms or your pain behave in any of the ways that I talked about? I would love to hear in the comments. I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you guys on the next one.